Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our reaction and review for Black Mirror Season 6, Episode 2, Loch Henry, which is coming on the heels, first and foremost, of Joan is Awful, which is just outstanding. I love every second of it. Favorite Black Mirror episode ever. I'm standing by that take.
Yeah, no, Jonah's Awful is an incredible episode, and we'll have that review for you in a link down below to check out as well. We're going to have all the Black Mirror episodes here at the channel today and over the next couple days, but Loch Henry wasn't it. And it's tough because it did come on the heels of Jonah's Awful, but even if it didn't, this episode felt like I was watching an episode of Criminal Minds, which is, pretty dark show, but it has a very specific formula. And so did this episode, very similar to that procedural where it's like you have a case of the week, somebody's a killer, you're trying to figure out, and usually the first person that shows up in the show ends up being the real killer that they figure out by the end of the episode. And it was like exactly rinse and repeat of that in this episode, which for me is really shocking. This is Black Mirror. This isn't, Criminal Minds or NCIS or,
Yeah.
CSI. This is Black Mirror. The
Well,
bar is way too high for this.
we'll talk a little bit more about why the bar is so high, what didn't work. Like there's a couple of things that I did enjoy about this episode as well, but just coming off of Jonah's Awful, it is a very high expectation. But hit that subscribe button because in addition to this episode, we are going to have discussions of all of Black Mirror season 6. And then also, we are doing Silo, a great
Yes.
dystopian drama, very much worth your time if you're not watching it. Which is an incredible horror show with awesome characters and great twists kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Earlier today as well, The Walking Dead, Dead City. It's on. We finally have the Negan and Maggie story, and our review and reaction to that is also online. Very, very busy day at the channel.
Oh, yeah, it's very busy here.
Yeah, like insanely busy. Okay, so this is really the thing, and you alluded to this a minute ago. It's just that the bar is really high for Black Mirror, and I think the other
Yeah.
thing is when you are, Charlie Brooker, who has established himself as like one of the most creative minds out there, I think we have to hold you to a higher standard than we would pretty much any other content creator. And it didn't feel like Black Mirror. I think if this was another show, I would probably honestly be on here and being like, this was a really good episode because I mean, it did have a great atmosphere. It was dark. It was intense. It's just, this isn't what I'm expecting coming from this show. And it didn't do anything to just sort of like stimulate my mind or make me sort of surprised or come on here and be like, oh my God, I can't believe they did this. I never thought of this before. It's like, I've thought of all of this before.
Yes, I mean, it all takes place, where it's like you've got this couple, Pia Davis, and they're together. They met in film school. They're out there to do some documentary about some Eggman.
Yeah.
And because there's actually a crime that happened here that Davis's dad was, the police officer on, and, everything that happened with it, Pia suggests that they start to do a documentary about that instead, because it was like, oh man, this terrible thing happened in this town. Used to be a thriving town. Now it's no longer, nobody wants to go there anymore because all this stuff happened there that they're like, okay, finally she convinces them, let's do the film about this. But we met his mom really early on. There was the whole like, oh, the father went there and there was this shootout where he got shot in the shoulder. As soon as that was said, I was like, well, isn't that convenient? Everybody else died, but not him. He just got shot in the shoulder. And we've seen that so many times on other shows where it's like the person involved shoots themselves, but not in any way that's going to make them actually die. Just, in the shoulder, in the leg, something like that. What he didn't account for was that he was going to end up getting an infection in the hospital and dying from that. But the minute that was like, oh, he conveniently just got shot in the shoulder, I was like, okay, it's the dad. The dad's involved. He's got to be very obviously involved to me. And then it was like, well, if the dad's involved, the mom very likely at least knows something because she's acting very strange.
Yeah.
It was just too obvious of the people who were involved. I know they were trying to make it seem like, oh, maybe Stuart's dad is involved. I was like, nah, that's too obvious for this show. I was like, and I really hope it's not turns out to be Davis's parents because that's very obvious. But here we are.
It's a format problem where the whole joy of Black Mirror, and I know I'm saying joy with a show that's often very, very dark, but the
Yes.
joy of it is that you get these thought-provoking stories that kind of veer in these interesting turns that kind of leave you thinking about society. And the story that was being told here, it did not benefit from this format at all. Like the way in which, in my head, if you're going to tell this specific story, the Anna Dare mystery, and what really happened here, it would have been much more beneficial to be, I don't know, a 4 or 6 episode series where you could see a lot of other characters in this town. You could have set up somebody else as an accomplice rather than have it be, Davis's own parents. And you could have had an opportunity then to really kind of set up this interesting, like, whodunit adjacent story that kept you guessing and kept you wondering. But there's not enough time in a single episode of Black Mirror to do this. You basically got an hour to introduce characters, give a big reveal, and because of that format, you're not giving yourself a lot of options. You're not giving yourself a lot of opportunities, and really, you're just sort of left with this hollow feeling that I don't like. It doesn't sit well to me, and it's a shame because this is a beautifully shot episode. Like, it looks really cool. The setting is unique enough, and it's not as though the writing is even bad. It's just that the writing is not doing what this show does, and it's not leaving you with anything. Like, I'm never gonna watch this episode again, and there are episodes of Black Mirror that for sure I will.
Yeah, this to me was I know I'm being hard on this episode, but listen, I'm a fan of this show and
Yeah.
I feel the fans are the people that keep the shows accountable. Like we love this show and we know how good this show is and can be. So when I get an episode like this, it's like, oh yeah, I could have watched this on Criminal Minds. In fact, I did for, seasons and seasons of the same sort of story. It's just in a much more beautiful location. Now, the one part of the story that I was happy that they were sort of touching on is sort of like this obsession that people have over crime right now, where, we've got lots of shows like Only Murders in
Yeah.
the Building, people doing podcasts about these real life crimes that happen and people getting very obsessed with it and not really about the people who end up, dead in these situations, but people who are the killers and sort of how that affects, the situation where it's like people are always focused on the wrong thing. It is always sensationalized about who the
Yeah.
killer is and about their story. How did they get to be like this and not about the people who are dead. And we even saw that in this episode where the three of them were like, driving back in the car and they're all singing a song, making up these horrible things that actually happened to these people in this house and how desensitized and detached we are as a society of these horrible things that actually happen to people. And I think that that message in this show is really important because that is something that is happening now and has been happening for a really long time. We've even seen Netflix, catching a bunch of crap for having, the Dahmer series and stuff like that. There's the families of the victims don't want to relive this stuff. And we saw that at the end of this episode too, where it was like Davis's whole story has come out about his mom, about his dad. He's winning this award and he's just, he's so hurt and empty inside because of everything that happened and that it's affected him. It's affected him for the rest of his life. It's both of his parents. It's not just one. It's an important message, I think, to have out there that it's like, stop focusing on the killers and focus on the people who are affected by what this person did.
The ending is the best part of this episode, and it's weird in a way because usually a good ending can save a lot of what comes beforehand. And I do think this was a good ending where, it does leave you thinking a lot about Davis just sitting there. He's got his BAFTA, he's found this measure of success, like this thing he's always wanted. But the thing that really struck me the most were these other filmmakers that were there on the red carpet with him, and they were sort of talking about, oh, we're thinking about doing a scripted drama. We're looking for our Pia. It's like you're looking to cast this guy's dead girlfriend
Mhm.
while he's standing right there. Like, do you know how awful you sound? Like how vapid and soulless. And it's like that is the closest this episode got to Black Mirror to me, where they're sort of really looking at the relationship people have to their art, the way in which people are detaching themselves from their humanity. And I think what makes this all the more profound is that for most of this episode, Davis didn't even want this. He didn't want to tell this story. He just wanted to tell the egg story. And, if he could go back in time and not imagine this stuff about his family, I'm sure he probably would, because now not only is he haunted by these things, but he's also, oh, you're the Loch Henry guy. Like that's specifically thrown in there. So it's if he tries to go and make another documentary at this point, like what's the reception going to be? Oh yeah, that's great. But what about your family? Tell me a little bit more about what happened there. He doesn't get another chance.
Yeah, and he had nothing to do with what his parents did. I
Yeah.
mean, yes, he's having all this success, but he's lost both of his parents. And not only has he lost them, he's lost them sort of emotionally and mentally, like everything that he thought he knew about them. The loving mom who made shepherd's pie, the father who was a police officer and, helped apprehend this terrible person, these, sort of pillars in his mind and in his heart, and his mom and dad are these terrible, terrible people, and everybody knows about it.
That scene where she's making the shepherd's pie while like Pia is learning the truth. They did some like Hannibal stuff with that shepherd's pie, with like how slowly it's like, okay, what is she putting in the shepherd's pie? Are we going into like a full Sweeney Todd situation here?
I will have to say that I'm really impressed with Netflix in general with how they're keeping this Streamberry joke going.
Yeah.
Like everything in Jonah's Awful, where they really put themselves out there to be made fun of and to be the villain of the story. And now they're one of the villains of this story as well. It's not just Davis's parents. I mean, he sits there at the end where he's got a champagne and Stuart's calling him, like, hey, congratulations. He's like, no, there's no congratulations here. And right beside him is a little card that's like, from your friends at Streamberry, congratulations. And it's just like, they're using him for content again. Like, and that's pretty much what was happening in Jonah's Awful as well, where it was like, real people are being used as content. And now we're seeing this again, where real people and real sort of deaths and murders and whatever are being used as content.
Okay, this is
Shame
all
on you, Streamberry.
we're gonna get real dark now that we're like this far into the
All right.
video, because the Streamberry slash Netflix conversation, like there is so much irony wrapped in all of this, because we can sit here and be like, all right, the message of this story is we should all be really concerned about the victims, the way they're all being exploited for various use on these
Oh,
streaming
it's not cancel your Netflix?
No, see, here's the thing. There has been outrage, as you put it out, for certain things that Netflix has done,
Yes.
but I feel like, you know what the thing that has gotten more outrage than anything else over the past several months when it comes to Netflix is? How dare you not let me share my password with someone else? It's like, this is what people are really up in arms about. Sure, you can do these true crime things that are just
Or
like,
Squid Games, the reality show.
yeah,
Ew. Like,
yeah,
it's so gross, some of the things that they are doing.
all of this. I guess I'll still subscribe, but I can't take your content with someone else's
I
password.
know.
This is a bridge too far.
It's true.
All of this, like, I don't even think Charlie Brooker content text of all of that sort of thing when he was making this show, but it all speaks to how messed up we all are as a society, and we can all say this about ourselves here. Like, let's be honest. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of these like crime documentary shows. Like, I'll just throw that out there right now. But it's like, you know, I've seen some of them, and some of them probably aren't that great to the people who were victims and what actually happened in real life. And I think we're all in that sort of same boat. And maybe we all take something from this, maybe we don't. We all just go back and we just watch more of this sort of stuff. It's just this is who we've all been sort of programmed to be at this point. Like there's no real denying that.
Yeah, I think if there's any takeaway from this episode, it is, to sort of put a mirror on yourself because a lot of people do watch these crime documentaries and they're watching it as entertainment or as information to be like, oh, I didn't know about this or I didn't know about that. And that's fine. But there are a lot of people that watch it as entertainment, which is, a really crazy thing to think about. Like real people died.
Yeah.
And, it was a real things that happen to real families. And those people don't, really get to move on from that. And the more that it, you know, keep making the same crime documentaries over and over again about the same people that it's like it just never stops and you end up in a loop forever. Like what was going to happen to Davis, where it was like, yeah, I made this documentary, I was part of it. And now they're like, oh, and now we're going to make it into a TV series, which is why I found it interesting that Netflix was like okay with this because like I said, they really caught some heat over some of the stuff that they have done and doing exactly this.
I think it's just, and it sounds
But
so,
we're all in bed with Netflix
yeah.
anyways. Like we can sit back and be like, how dare you? But we all have Netflix, right?
And I don't, this sounds really, I don't know, this sounds really cold, but I just don't know how much they care. Like, I'm sure maybe there's like a
They
tiny part of
don't.
their conscience that makes them think about it. But at the end of the day, it's like they can disguise everything as art. Like, they can just say, okay, this is art. This is, our fictional recounting of this story and just move on with their lives. Now,
Yeah, it feels like this is Netflix coming out in these two episodes and being like, "We know we're the villain, but you're going to consume our content anyways, and you know it. So welcome aboard."
here's what I wish this episode actually was. Not saying I want the Loch Ness monster. That's too obvious with this being Loch Henry. I wanted a monster movie. If I love monsters. I love things that are like creepy and crazy, and like I wanted some like Bigfoot like creature to be like crawling around Loch Henry, like causing a little bit of because at the very least, it's more inventive. I mean, this is Netflix. We've already documented it. We're all still subscribed. They have more money than almost anyone. They can literally do anything, and it's with that in mind. It's just out of all that, this is what you guys decided to do.
Yeah, I was really shocked by this episode and not in any of the good ways. Like I really love this show and I have pretty high expectations of this show. I'm not saying every episode is perfect or anything like that over the years, but this episode really just felt like a procedural.
All right. Well, we'll see if this changes moving forward. We still have 3 more episodes of Black Mirror season 6 to watch. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our reviews and reactions to all of those. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.